Hello and welcome. This is Beriathan of the Citadel Guard with a quick update on the Warden Revamp for Update 35. Beta 2 was held this week, and with it we got a couple of tweaks and additions to the changes mentioned on my previous video. However, before we take a look at those changes, there's a few things I forgot to mention. First, I already told you on my previous video that the healing values for the Warden were higher than intended, but I forgot to mention that this is also true of Javelin Gambit damage. As such, I will not be covering any Javelin Gambits today, since their values have not been adjusted yet. Secondly, there's a bug present in both rounds of beta that affected the damage output for all classes. The damage values did not correspond to what the tooltips showed, with the latter being the intended values. This partially explained why my parses during the last round of beta were lower than my life parses, so I will wait until the bug is fixed before doing another DPS comparison. With that out of the way, let's look at the Warden notes for this round of beta. So, first of all, we have two notes regarding our healing gambits. Persevere healing has been reduced to its intended value, and Celebration of Skill healing has increased. So, here you can see a comparison of the healing values from the first round of beta and the second round of beta. You will see the changes in the Persevere and Celebration of Skill values, and something that the notes don't mention but also was tweaked is the fact that Safeguard had erroneously one more tick than the other heals over time. This has been adjusted on beta 2, and now all heals have the same duration. Lastly, and this is something I forgot to mention on the previous video, as you see here, this comment from On Magmahal stating that non-healer classes, and that includes Warden Javelins, will no longer have tactical healing rating. So yeah, basically Wardens would be losing the tactical healing rating they have under Javelins, meaning that their heals would be stronger at the beginning of a level cap and will get progressively weaker as the level cap advances. However, he has also stated that the scaling on the healing skills has been tweaked to provide a smoother curve and better scaling throughout all levels. So I guess that remains to be seen. If anything, I think it would be better for Wardens to keep the tactical healing rating on their Javelins, maybe decrease it a little bit so as to not make it OP. I guess in the end we'll need to wait and see how exactly will that work, because so far all the beta builds we've had have had Javelins with tactical healing still. And so that means if we remove the healing, the values would go down a little bit. So for example, here you see an image of all the Warden heals with and without the Javelin equipped. And you will see that the healing has dropped to about half of what it was. And that is something a little bit worrying. But you also gotta keep in mind on these pictures that I've taken, my Javelin also has a lot of the healing traceries. It has the shield line healing, and it also has the conviction healing. So I hope if we take those traceries into consideration, the values will not get reduced as much when you remove the Javelin. But even so, I thought it was worth it showing this to you, the comparison of the healing values when you have a Javelin equipped and unequipped. Still, take it with a grain of salt, and we'll still need to wait until beta 3 to see if there is any further changes for this. The next note says that Exultation of Battle damage and healing has been increased. Once again, here you can take a comparison of the values from beta 1 and the values from beta 2, and you will see it's maybe not the biggest increase of all, but it's still a considerable difference in my opinion, with about 10k more damage and healing added to the Gambit. Next up we have the boot damage has been reduced, and this one is a little bit funny in my case because you will see that at least the tooltip for the boot has actually increased between beta 1 and beta 2. Not entirely sure why. Maybe that has something to do with another one of the notes that we'll get to in just a moment. I'm not entirely sure, but well, you'll see here that the damage for all the Gambits in this line has increased. So I'm guessing what this note means is after the increase was done on all these other Gambits, the damage of the boot was still way higher than it should have been, so it was reduced. But if you compare the damage from beta 1 to the damage from beta 2, you'll see that it's basically the same relation, the boot doing more damage or close to the same damage that Onslaught did on its first attack. A little bit below Wall of Steel, well, a little bit higher in the case of beta 2. And the only Gambit that didn't change was Cauterizing Steel. So yeah, this note is a little bit weird for me, and I'm guessing there's something here that's not working as intended, but I guess we'll need to wait until beta 3 to see exactly what happened. Next up we have Ranged Resounding Challenge now correctly deals initial damage, and you will see here something that we mentioned on the previous video as well. Ranged Resounding Challenge didn't have the initial hit, but now it does, to go hand in hand with the melee version of the Gambit. Once again, Javelin Gambit damage is not adjusted for this beta, so we're not going to be doing a comparison with the melee version. The important thing is that we have the initial hit on the ranged Gambit as well. Next one we have power costs and initial damage adjusted for several assailment skills. And once again, since Javelins are not fully tweaked, I'm not taking a deep look into it, but that's what we have in here. However, this also gives me the chance to mention something that I didn't see anywhere in the notes, and that's the fact that all the Gambits on the offensive strike line have seen their damage increased. As you can see on this picture in here with the comparison, we see an overall increase on all 4 Gambits of the chain. The next note establishes a Spear of Fate damage increased, and also Spear of Fate now pulses 11 times, up from 10. So here we can see the comparison between Spear of Fate, and at least on my tooltips I don't see any difference in damage, but you can see that indeed the dot pulses now one more time. Remember that this dot pulses once every second, so now it ticks for a full 13 seconds, up from the previous 12. Keep in mind though that this is taking into account the 2 extra ticks you get from traits. As you see from the notes, the base version has been increased from 10 to 11, but I got the 2 extras that you can get from traits. Next one we have Shield Tactics will no longer reapply stun immunity if you already have active stun immunity from using Shield Tactics in the last 10 seconds. So once again, this is something that I also mentioned on the previous video. There was a bug with Shield Tactics where you would use the Gambit, you will get the buffs, and you will also get the stun immunity, and if you refresh the Gambit before the stun immunity were off, you would refresh the stun immunity. It would not go on cooldown. This has been fixed on beta 2, so this bug will not be making it to the live build. Next up, we have power costs lowered for builders and mastery skills. And yeah, you'll see here that Gambit builders no longer cost any power, and instead the power cost they previously had has now been set as the power value for our Masteries, something that once again I also mentioned on my previous video. So Gambit builders no longer have any power cost attached to them, and Masteries, the power cost on Masteries has been decreased substantially, and now they cost around 500 power. Next one we have Gambit Chains, now tier up regardless of Gambit type or order. Except for potency Gambits, any Gambit will contribute to a Gambit chain. So what that means essentially is that you can do your Gambits in any order you'd like, and you would still be building advanced technique. You are not set to a specific length now. So for example, if we take the training dummy in here, you can see that we can open up with Shorty of Death, and we'll get the step 1 in the Gambit chain. Now we can do power attack. We have step 2. We can do something like resounding challenge. We go to step 3, impressive flourish. We got 1 advanced technique. For example, now we can do offensive strike. We have step 1. Now we do desolation. We have step 2. Now we go with safeguard, step 3. And now we can do unseen strikes, and we have another tick of advanced techniques. And finally, we can do power attack, followed by cauterizing steel. And now we can do something like maddening strike. And finally, unerring strike. And you would see that all these will end up building your advanced technique. You can also build your advanced techniques rapidly by just using 2-link Gambits. It's not the most damage efficient option, but it's the one that will give you damage techniques faster. So for example, the boot, persevere, precise blow, offensive strike, that will give you 1 advanced technique and is something super quick to do. But once again, it's probably not the most efficient way of getting advanced techniques. However, the option is there if you want it, so that's the added flexibility that this change introduces. However, that takes us to the next note. Gambit chains now require 4 Gambits used before you receive an advanced technique, up from 3. Since now we have the added flexibility of doing all our Gambits in any order we'd like, that comes with the countermeasure of increasing the number of Gambits you need to do before you gain your advanced techniques. But even with this change, building advanced techniques is now faster than it was before. And that also takes us to our next note. When a full stack of 3 advanced technique is spent, you will receive a short defensive buff. So you can see here I have my 3 advanced techniques active, and if I for example use Way of Spear, I will get this buff, advanced defense minus 2% incoming damage for 10 seconds. However, right now there is an additional bug/feature on this buff, and what this does basically is if you have a full stack of advanced techniques and then you continue doing Gambit chains, in a way going over the cap of advanced techniques, what that's gonna do is reapply the buff. So we can see, for example, I was at advanced techniques, I completed another chain, and I got the buff once again. Same duration and same damage reduction. However, there is a difference in this buff depending on whether you are spec'd on red or blue line. If you are running red line, the buff will give you minus 2% incoming damage, but if you are spec'd into blue line, it's going to actually give you minus 12% incoming damage, which makes sense having an additional damage reduction on the blue line. Now, why do I say that this is a bug/feature? On McMahal, when this was brought to his attention, he mentioned that he wasn't against the idea of Wardens getting an additional buff when building advanced technique over the cap. However, he wasn't as convinced on those 2 buffs being the same, because basically there would be no difference in between going over the cap or spending your advanced techniques, and in that case, why have advanced techniques at all? So even though we don't have an official confirmation yet, I would expect this to change. I'm not entirely sure how, but I would love to be able to keep both buffs. One buff for when you go over a cap of advanced techniques, and another buff when you consume a full stack of advanced techniques. However, once again, we'll need to wait until beta 3 to know the answer to that. And finally, we have some adjusted skill bonuses from cashing out advanced techniques. So I'm gonna show you a comparison of how the different bonuses of the advanced technique skills change depending on how many ticks you have. So first of all, we have the Way of the Spear, which gives you 10% Gambit initial hit damage. And with the full ticks of advanced techniques, you can get it all the way up to plus 40% Gambit initial hit damage. As you see here, is not a linear progression from tier 1 to tier 4, and that is the rule of thumb for all these advanced technique bonuses, although some of them do advance linearly as far as I remember. For example, next one we have is the Way of the Shield, which gives you plus 20%, 35%, 50% and 80% healing. So it's a linear progression up until the point where you take the jump from 50 to 80, which is actually double the value of what you get from the previous tiers. Each tier increases plus 15% and the last one gives you plus 30. So that is a really nice bonus for having the full count of advanced technique available when you use that skill. Next one, we have the Way of the Fist, which will give you plus 3%, 7%, 11%, and 15% damage over time. This one, as you see, is a linear progression, plus 4% for every tier. And then we have for the Free Peoples, which will give you reduced incoming damage on yourself and will also apply a reduced incoming damage on your fellowship at a lower rate. So using here how the values are changing. And once again, this one is also not a linear progression, at least not on your own damage reduction. The fellowship one is a little bit more consistent, but still has some variables in there. And the next batch of advanced technique skills are the ones that are not directly affected by it, with the exception of Recklessness. I foolishly forgot about Recklessness when taking the screenshots of this, so I only have the 0 advanced technique screenshot available in here that will give you minus 15% block, parry, and evade, and will give you plus 15% melee and range damage and some more critical rating. Now, from what I remember from beta 1, each tier of advanced techniques would give you plus an additional 5% on all these values. So in the end, you would be doing plus 30% melee and range damage with the full ticks of advanced techniques. However, this might change for beta 3, and we'll get to that in just a moment. We also have rapid techniques, which initially was set to consume your advanced techniques, but that was changed before beta 1. So the skill right now is on a really funny spot because it's not using your advanced techniques, but it's still benefiting from you having advanced technique ticks. That is a bug. Since the skill no longer consumes advanced technique, it's not supposed to benefit from it. So the increased duration that you get right now is something that will be removed, and you will be left with the base version of a 10-second duration on rapid techniques. And lastly, we have restorative shield work and desperate combat. The potency of these skills does not change depending on how many advanced techniques you have. What changes is how many times you benefit from these skills. So for example, with Restorative Shield Work at max advanced techniques, you would get 5 different heals for a total of plus 50% morale during the duration of the skill. And for Desperate Combat, you get additional uses that once again change depending on which was the last Gambit you used. So you can do Desperate Spear, Desperate Shield, Desperate Fist in any order you want, as long as you have Advanced Techniques counts. And as soon as you run out of Advanced Techniques, you will not be able to use the skill anymore. Each one of its versions will consume 1 tick of Advanced Technique. Now, there's something else about a Restorative Shield Work alongside Recklessness, which takes me to the last portion of the video, and that is what comes next for the Warden. There are a couple things that we still haven't seen on this revamp. On one hand, we have all our traceries. Once again, we know some of these traceries will be changing as the skills that the traceries affected no longer exists. And there are also some traceries that, even though are still applicable to our Gambits and our skills, are really not that useful. So on Mahal has confirmed we will be getting some new tanking traceries, and we also gotta see how some of the DPS traceries might change. My guess is the Warden is, of course, being balanced with these traceries in mind, so not having them right now might explain to some extent why the DPS doesn't feel quite there yet. That, coupled with the tooltip bug, might explain what's the issue in there, and the same goes for tanking. So my hope is that after we get traceries, everything will start working better. On Mahal has also said that he plans on shuffling some traits for the next beta of Bullroarer. No more details as to what that will be, but there will be some changes coming to traits. Just a quick update regarding these new traits coming with Beta 3. On Mahal took to the forums as I was finishing this video, and mostly he was addressing the players' comments and concerns regarding the new additions to beta, but something that he did say is that Fellowship Protector will change on the next Bullroarer, and it will now cause you to pulse out and minus incoming damage buff to your Fellowship when you consume a max tier 3 advanced technique buff. So there you have it, at least one confirmation of one of the new traits that we will be getting on the next beta of Bullroarer, and I actually like this idea a lot because this shows you the potential advanced technique has with the interaction it can provide with different Gambits and other traits, which is something that was also criticized somewhat. What is the true purpose of advanced technique? But I think with changes like this, we can see something more than what the system right now is. So adding an incoming damage buff to the Fellowship when you consume advanced technique alongside your Gambit, something that you can only get through traits, that is expanding on the system in a way that I find very in line with what the rest of the update does, and in a way that aims to improve Warden's utility for the rest of the group. So this change I really like a lot, but as with all the other things we will be discussing in this section of the video, we'll need to wait until Beta 3 hits to see exactly how they work. And he also has in here a proposition he's made to the players. As far as I know, this is still only on the proposition stages, nothing set in stone yet, but basically the way this would work is make Way of the Spear, Fist and Shield a baseline skill that you get around level 20. Instead of granting that through traits, reduce the cooldown to all those skills to 10 seconds, down from the 2 minutes it has. Sort of a way of including them more consistently in the rotation, and these skills would at least require 1 count of advanced technique to fire and will increase in potency with 2 or 3 counts of advanced techniques. Restorative Shield Work on the blue line will no longer consume advanced technique, but it will have the same function that it currently does with Max Advanced Technique. So that is 5 heals in the span of 10 seconds. And Recklessness will cost no Advanced Technique, and it will exist at its current 0 Advanced Technique version. That is basically minus 15% block, parry, and evade, and plus 15% melee and range damage, plus some extra critical rating. This with the intention of reducing the number of skills that would use advanced techniques so that it feels more worth it. It's my understanding to cash out the full count of advanced techniques and then add all the other skills into the rotation without worrying about whether they are at full potency or not. So how does the Warden fare with these new additions to the revamp that we got on Bullroarer 2? I did some DPS parses, but since we are having this tooltip bug, I'm not gonna show them to you because that's not reflective of the intended product yet. The DPS is still lower than the live version, but once again the bug would explain at least partially why that is. And on the blue line, regarding the tanking line, I would say that once again the Warden feels way more durable than it did on live, than it does on live, and that is quite exciting. I wasn't able to get into a group on this round of beta either. I sadly seem to be playing at times where there's not a lot of people online. So once again, the best thing I could come up with was trying to play at different scenarios that would require me to use my full arsenal to survive. So I, for example, went into an assault on Durstruck tier 5 and onto a hidden horde tier 1, and I gotta say I was able to survive for quite a long time. Some of the ads on Durstruck finally got the better of me, but that's also because I was pulling a lot of them. If you are a little bit more careful, you can still do it. And regarding the hidden horde tier 1, I only tried the first ad pull, but once again I was able to survive quite well against the giants. I was even able to down 1 or 2 of them, and in the end what got me were the knockbacks the giants did. Those sent me down to the chasm, and I died from falling damage rather than any other kind of damage. That's something that can be fixed, positioning myself better, but yeah, I was able to at least survive in the first wave of ads in the hidden horde. I nonetheless understand that soloing stuff is quite different from tanking stuff, and there will be differences in doing both. So a lot of players have expressed their concerns on the overall utility of advanced techniques, but that's one of the reasons why it seems there will be some new traits introduced. Some skills will stop using advanced techniques to increase the utility it will provide to other skills, and that way also giving us the chance of keeping up the new defensive buffs for way longer. But once again, we'll need to wait until beta 3 to see exactly all these changes, the new traits, the new traceries, which I'm really excited to see, and hopefully by then we'll get the full picture of how the Warden will play from now on. The devs have said that they are planning on doing 3 rounds of beta for update 35, and they will do a 4th one if they consider it is needed, but from the looks of it, it seems it's not set in stone yet whether there will be a 4th round or beta or not. So we'll need to wait and see, but for the time being, what we get on round 3 will be what we'll get on live, plus maybe some further tweaks to some of the values and some of the functionalities, maybe the cooldown times, but you start getting the idea of how Warden will play from now on. Nonetheless, if you have any ideas, feedback, suggestions on how to improve things, be it advanced techniques, Gambit Chains, damage output, healing output, or what have you, I would still recommend you to either go to the forums or go to Discord and provide your comments to Mac Mahal. He does take the time to read them all and answer most of them, maybe not all of them, but from what I have seen, he takes all this feedback seriously and considers the ideas the player base has been giving him. So in the end, I think the final state of this Warden Revamp will be a community effort. So once again, if you have any ideas you would like to share, feel free to do so on the forums or on Discord, and I'll see you on Beta 3 when we'll hopefully have more exciting news regarding this Warden Revamp. For the time being, this has been all on today's video. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, my friends, stay safe, take care, good luck to you all, and I will see you later.